Hi guys, it's Lucy from Craft by Bush, and I hope you've been keeping well. I wanted to let you know that I have been offering some free watercolor lessons over my Instagram account. I'm going to leave the link below. So I also wanted to bring you this real-time watercolor painting tutorial of some pretty lilacs, and I'm just going to walk you through it just as I paint. If you have any questions at all, please let me know on the comments below, and I hope you enjoy. For this particular painting, I am going to be using the Art Philosophy paint set, the Tropicals. My brush is a DaVinci Mop #2, Winsor Newton round 4, and my watercolor paper is by B Paper, and it's cold press. I'm going to be mixing the purple reef along with the sunset, and these are just some of the colors that I'm going to be mixing together, but of course you can use whatever purples you like and just play around with it. I think it's so important when you're playing with watercolor to find what colors you prefer to use, what combinations, what methods. It's really all about experimenting and trying to find your own style. Now I also want a little bit of blue in my painting, so I'm taking the hurricane color, and that makes a nice darker purple when combining it with the reef. Now once you're happy with your color palette, I'm going to go ahead and just dip my brush into the water and just paint some very organic, loose shapes onto the paper. I haven't pre-drawn the lilac. I did, however, went ahead and drew the jar. Now what I'm doing, I went into the purple paint and I'm just dabbing the tip of my brush onto the wet paper, and then I go back and take some of the darker color and do the same paint movement. And you want to make sure that the lines are very loose and organic, because that gives the painting a lot of movement. And you're going to see it all come together as we move along. Now I'm going to go in and paint the leaves. So I'm going to take some of the parrot. I'm also going to take some tiki and mix those together. And like I said before, this isn't pre-drawn, so it would help if you have a picture that you can refer back to, and so you can see where the individual leaves are all placed and whatnot. So I'm just loosely painting the leaves here and there. I go back and add some of the darker brown while my paint's still wet, so we're playing with wet on wet, just all the different greens, and that way it just gives the painting a lot more texture. I'm just going to continue to paint the leaves here and there in between where the lilacs are going to be, and again just using all different variations of green. I don't clean my brush in between, just so all the colors mix together. And if you wanted to pre-draw this, I mean, that would also help. But it doesn't have to be perfect. It's really important that when you're working with watercolor, you allow the paint to do what it wants to do. It's actually very humbling because a lot of times the paint does what it wants to do and you don't have a lot of control. What I'm doing here is I'm just taking away some of the paint because it was a little too dark. So I just took my brush and took some of the paint away. I'm just gonna continue to paint leaves here and there. Go back and forth between dark and light colors. You usually want to start with your lighter colors and work your way towards darker colors. In this case, I am doing both as I go along. I'm going to go ahead and clean my brush and go back to painting the lilac. So I'm going to dip it back into the purples and just lightly just paint all around the leaves. Making sure that if your leaves are still wet, you don't really want to touch them with your purple color. If you wanted to wait until the leaves dry, that would also work. But I wanted to do this in real time so you can see. So I'm just going around and avoiding the leaves. Again, I go back and I dip it into the various purples and lilacs that we made, and just adding different hues and tones of the colors and alternating between light and dark here and there. Here I'm adding a little darker towards the areas in the middle where I think the shadows would be. So closer to the middle, just closer to the leaves where the bunch meets. Now the outer edge of the painting, I want it to be a little more distinguishable as individual flowers. And so what I'm doing as purposely as possible, I am just dabbing little dots just to make sure that that you can see that they're distinguishable little flowers. I'm going to go back and just add some darker little dots. And usually, again, outside on the outer edge of the lilacs. And you can see that by starting with very loose painting at the beginning and then going back with a little bit of darker color and just making those little dots a little more distinguishable, you're making great little layers that are starting to form into something that you can actually distinguish as little flowers and just the shape of the lilacs themselves. And I'm just going to continue to do the same thing. And you always want to just start light and slowly build darker and darker. When you're doing watercolor, it's usually recommended to start light and then work your way towards a darker hue. It's always easier to add than to take away. Now I'm taking a little bit of the blue as well. And because I'm adding some of the blue on this side, I also have to add it to the other side just to make sure that everything is balanced. While the purples dry a little, I'm going to go back into the greens and just draw some other leaves. I'm going to draw the leaves in between here and there. And of course, if you have a reference photo, this is where it would be very helpful just to refer back and just see where the various leaves can be found in a bunch of lilacs. Now that the first leaves are dry, I'm going to go back and add just a little more green, a little darker green here and there, and usually putting them on one side of the leaf, just where I think the shadows would be. I see some leaves peeking here and there, and just a little touches of green. Again, it doesn't have to be perfect. Now we're going to move on to the jar, and all I've done right now is clean my brush, and just with water I'm starting to fill the inside of the jar. I will leave certain areas dry because I don't want the paint to go there. I'm going to dip my brush into the icy blue. I'm just going to put it on the side there, take some of that of the paint off by dipping my brush quickly into the water and just touching the edges where I previously dropped some water. So you want to make sure that your paint is very diluted, and you're just touching here and there and allowing the paint to do its thing. Now I went back and took a little bit of that bluish purple that we had created, and I'm just using it for the edges of the jar just to give it a little more form. Just a few touches here and there, because I want some reflection on the jar. And again, it has to be nice and thin, very diluted, barely there. I'm going to clean my brush and just do a little bit of brown and just do straight lines here and there. And these are obviously the stems inside the jar. Some are darker than others. I'm just doing them very loose and quickly with the brush. I'm going to clean my brush and I'm going to go back and dilute the stems a little bit more, just so they are a little bit thicker because they are underwater, so they look larger. And then I'm going to take the brush again and then to make quick horizontal lines to imitate water. Now I went back, I took a little bit more of that blue that we made before, and I'm just outlining the edge of the jar again. And I go back, dip my brush in the water, and just dilute the paint that's already there. Just going in at the top of the jar just to give it a little more shadow. Clean my brush again and just make sure you blend that in really nice with a clean brush. Just gonna add a touch of that green for an extra reflection. Now we have given the painting a little time for the purple to dry, so I went back and dipped my brush in the purple, and I'm going to be drawing little flowers, and the little flowers are simply just 5 little dots all around. And because it's darker, again, you can see that these are part of the lilac, and I'm concentrating in the center and just in areas that I think would be a little bit darker. And of course your reference photo will help you decide where that is. Now I've changed my brush and I'm using a number 4 round just to make them a little bit smaller, and so I have a little more control of the shapes that I'm painting. I'm just going to continue to paint little flowers here and there. And of course in the darker purple, but I go back and forth and I don't clean my brush in between because I want to make sure I have that beautiful range of all the different purples that we created. Now with the smaller brush, it gives me better control so I can paint daintier little blossoms at the top. And I'm just going to continue to do this all throughout my painting and just have fun with the process. I think art should be a relaxing medium, something that you do just to get away from the everyday. So try to be patient and just enjoy the process. As you can see, now that the paint has dried, the entire process is mostly just creating those little flowers here and there, but not necessarily filling the entire area with little flowers. It's just to give you the illusion and you can actually see the shape of the little flowers. You want to make sure that your painting is balanced. So whatever you do to one side, you usually want to make sure you do it to the other side as well. And just more and more little dainty flowers. And you're going to continue to do this until you're satisfied with how many little flowers you've put on. And again, it doesn't have to be perfect, and you don't have to fill the entire area with little flowers. I'm going back in with yet a darker color, and I'm filling in the middle where I think again the shadows are. So you've seen how we worked towards the dark. We started very light, then I went a little bit with a medium hue, and now we're going in with the darker color. And that's how you build layers with watercolor. And when you're working with watercolor and even acrylic paint, you want to make sure that when you're building layers, you let one layer dry before you apply the next layer. It's actually very important, especially in watercolor. That way you don't have a big muddy mess on your canvas. Now what I'm doing is adding just some small details to the leaves. This is of course optional. You don't have to do that. I just went back and just added some little lines here and there. Just a little more detail. We're getting very close to being done. I'm just gonna add a few more touches here and there. A little more shading. I think just a couple more leaves here and there, and this painting should be all done. There you go. So there you go. I hope you enjoy this video. Like I said before, it is pretty much in real time, so I hope you enjoy this longer format. I also wanted to let you know that I have this free printable available on my blog, and I'm going to leave a link below so you can go ahead and visit. And I think that's it for now. Thank you so much for stopping by. Please consider giving this video a thumbs up if you liked it, of course, and subscribe for more. See you next time.